Ladies and gentlemen, the Union government has proposed a significant overhaul of composition of the House of the People through the Constitution 131st Amendment Bill 2026, which seeks to increase the strength of the Lok Sabha. In fact, which seeks to increase the strength of Parliament as well as state assemblies. India has been talking about reserving seats for women in Parliament for nearly 3 decades. Finally, now a special 3-day session is being convened to fast-track the implementation of the Nari Shakti Vandan Adhiniyam. The aim is 33% reservation for women in the 2029 Lok Sabha and State Assembly elections. The plan involves expanding the Lok Sabha from 550 to 850 seats, with 1/3, that is 273, to be allocated to women. This 33% quota will apply to seats in Lok Sabha, state assemblies and the Delhi Assembly, including a quota within the quota for scheduled castes, scheduled tribes. The seats, in fact, reserved for women in the Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies will change every election cycle to prevent what is seen as the permanent reservation of specific constituencies and the proposed legislation defining these reservations to continue only for 15 years or the sunset provision. Now, this is not a new idea. The Women's Reservation Bill was in fact first introduced in 1996, from way back during Deva Gowda's time, and successively, whether it be Vajpayee's era, Manmohan Singh's era, so much more has happened. Most of these times, these lapsed. Now, this landmark reform, of course, has been implemented and is being spearheaded by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who has also written a heartfelt letter to women across the country on the importance of women's reservation in legislative bodies and urging faster action on a long pending reform. The Prime Minister strongly argued that women's participation in legislatures is essential for India's future development. He wrote, "It is imperative that we do whatever is possible for that. The active participation of women is absolutely non-negotiable." The Prime Minister has also urged all political parties to support the upcoming constitutional amendment, stressing that delays would be unfair to women. The daughters of India cannot be asked to wait endlessly for what is rightfully theirs. When the voice of women becomes stronger in our legislatures, the voice of democracy itself becomes stronger. Now, as it stands today, implementation of the bill is tied to 2 conditions of fresh census as well as delimitation or the redrawing of constituencies. Only after these seats will be identified and 33% reservation for women will be implemented, and it is this delimitation and not reservation for women in legislatures which the opposition claims is one of their big concerns. The opposition feels linking 33% quota implementation to a new accelerated delimitation process is like what Sonia Gandhi called an assault on Constitution and extremely dangerous. M.K. Stalin has questioned the timings of the bill with state elections on, and Revant Reddy has reached out to states, particularly south of India, asking for them to stand united. Well, that's the lowdown of what we are expecting in the special sessions in Parliament when it comes to delimitation, when it comes to women's quota, women's reservation, the 33% magic figure, and all the politics around it. But joining me right now is Priyanka Chaturvedi, the former Rajya Sabha MP from Shiv Sena UBT. Thank you very much for joining me right now, Priyanka Chaturvedi. My first question, crucial days ahead for women's representation and rights. Women's reservation bill has been passed, but the reality of it, is it closer or still distant? How would you see this?
See, in 2023, I was part of the passing of the historic bill in Lok Sabha, and the Rajya Sabha passed the bill unanimously. And even then we had raised our concerns with regards to implementation date moving to 2029. We were in the favor of immediate implementation of the existing seats, and we were also fearful of the fact that connecting it to census and delimitation could delay it further. If those amendments were made at that very point in time, we probably would not have needed this session, which is happening between the 16th to 18th, where an amendment is being made to the original act. And it is exactly what we feared, what we were talking about, that it will delay the process if we wait for the 2026 census to conclude. Again, that census was due in 2021. But however, I am very confident that we will have a bill and we will have women entering the parliament as well as the assemblies in 2029. A promise, a commitment which was given by all political parties, and now through this amendment it will become a reality. So I'm very positive about it.
Well, Priyanka Chaturvedi, the truth is opposition is extremely worried. They are repeatedly talking about delimitation and the census link to what is now increasingly emerging as the women's reservation, from Stalin to Sonia Gandhi. How do you see this?
It was a promise in 2023 by a way of an act that this bill would be implemented, 33% reservation would be implemented in 2029. Again, census delimitation was a concern that it will not be able to, by the virtue of linking it to census and delimitation, it could delay the process further. Our problem was that if you do not look at it now, this could not be implemented in 2029. The government now is bringing an amendment 30 months down the line, 30 months after passing that historic bill, and actually undoing the error that it had done. Now the problem here is, and this is where I'm coming to, what the opposition is saying. Opposition A is talking about the timing. Please understand there are two crucial state elections happening while this parliamentary session is being called for. Whether it is West Bengal or whether it is Tamil Nadu, both these states are governed by the opposition parties which are opposed to the BJP. To pull their MPs into a session was a concern that was raised. Trying to reap political benefit out of it, you've actually virtually made people forget that, look, there was a bill that we've already passed in 2023 and it was the government's job to ensure its implementation. Every single party had supported the bill. The second problem is with regards to the delimitation. Please understand, they had via a section, I think it's 33A or 330A, which says that the delimitation would be on the basis of the latest census, followed by a delimitation and then implementation of women's bill. It was the government's language which was all incorrect, and now they are amending it. So again, I would again continue to say, yes, we can question the timing, we can question the intent, we can question everything. But please, let's not delay the entry of women into the parliaments and assemblies by, blocking an important amendment which could help smoothen the process of making women enter the parliament. And I'll just give you another bit here. 2023 a bill was passed. In 2024 we had a Lok Sabha election. Everybody showed their intent, everybody supported this particular bill, but in terms of representation, in terms of giving tickets to women, the national parties were at merely 12%. Even now our parliament has only 14% Lok Sabha women representatives. So the intent, if it's not done through an act and the amendment is not brought in, till then we are going to see a problem of, finding some reasons to deny them an entry.
Priyanka, let's just digress a little bit. You've got so much of love and respect from all quarters while you were at Rajya Sabha. A rarity of sorts, I mean, just the outpouring of love that you have received from different quarters. As somebody who has been in the parliament, who's just recently moved out of the Rajya Sabha, what would you say for women like Priyanka Chaturvedi who are in parliament or aspire to be there?
Firstly, thank you so much for your kind words. It's these words which have given me motivation to continue fighting my fight, and which I shall continue to do, and also made me believe that I should be back in the parliament in some form or the other. So that is something I will continue to work on. But yes, let me tell you, I come from a totally non-political, non-privileged background. The only privilege I probably had was an education and a belief that I could contribute through my voice and through my commitment to the people of this country once I got into the parliament. And that is why you see a lot of love and affection coming from all sides. And when I entered the parliament, I was more, keeping India first more than my politics first. And that is why perhaps it was a cross-party contribution which you saw, and cross-party affection that you saw. Now, what I want to say with regards to how this bill will help, please remember there are over thousands and thousands of such Priyanka Chaturvedis waiting at the doors, waiting to be recognized by their political parties, waiting for that moment where they would be able to represent their country, their political party inside the parliament and have the privilege to serve the nation as a parliamentarian. And I say this with total conviction that there are so many women who are still awaiting that one moment that perhaps a Priyanka Chaturvedi got. What I, by the virtue of my commitment to this reservation bill, is that we would open the doors for just so many more women who would probably be appreciated across party lines, and they'd be able to keep India's vision forward above their politics, above their party lines, and be able to do and serve the nation for a larger purpose. So that is why I'm totally rooting for this particular bill. And as someone who came from a totally non-political background, which I keep talking about, and from not a dynastic background, I did manage to make it through. I did have problems on my way, and problems I continue to face in terms of the trolling that comes my way. But at the same time, I do believe this reservation would guarantee the women their representation in the parliament and in the assemblies around the country.
You know, Priyanka Chaturvedi, this is nothing but Priyanka Chaturvedi sticking her neck out for what she really believes in. Something people are very used to seeing you do. But do you really think that the opposition and the government will be able to see eye to eye on this?
No, I'm very certain. See, women of the country are waiting and watching. 2023, the bill that was passed, the act that came into form, was of a census and delimitation. All the political parties had signed up for something like this, where women would have reservation, but it would come after a census and delimitation. All that the government is now saying is that we will now, because this census process could be delayed, and it has started late, it has started only in 2026, we'll peg it to the 2011 census, and we will proportionately increase 50% representation in the state assemblies as well as in the parliament. So without impacting the current representation in the parliament, they are adding some more seats to accommodate women. So the country is watching, the women of the country are watching. They have waited for over 3 decades to make this a reality. I'm very certain that all political parties across both sides would realize their responsibility towards the women of this country, will express their doubts, will express their intentions, will express everything, but ultimately come forward and support this bill in totality and make this a reality. It's a commitment over past 3 decades that we have tried. There have been pushes and pulls, and 2029 would be completion of almost three and a half decades of that struggle.
You know, Priyanka, I have to ask you this question. It's 2026, and while in the parliament we don't have many, I haven't heard any naysayer in the parliament when it comes to women's reservation, but outside the parliament, there are still people who are saying it's 2026. Why do we require a quota? Why do we require women's reservation? What is this about? Why is everyone in the parliament going gung-ho about women's reservation? To those people who are the naysayers today, who are saying, why do we really need it? What would Priyanka Chaturvedi, the former Rajya Sabha MP, say?
No, I would just tell them, in 1950, our founding fathers believed that we will create an India which would be equal for all in terms of not just voting rights, but even in terms of representation. Sarojini Naidu ji had written to the British Prime Minister in 1931 saying that we do not want a quota system, we do not want some preferential treatment, we want equality. That was what our founding fathers thought, that this is how India would come across, and probably in 2026, forget 2026, at the immediate implementation of election system in 1950 when we were declared a republic, we would have women participants. The first parliament had just about 5% women representation, and from there to now, we stand at only 14% representation. So having said that, barricades were created, women were not given those choices, women were not treated as equals, and by the virtue of 50% women as voters and as part of the country's population, we do not have adequate representation. And that is the only reason why this quota system was introduced. We also, our founding fathers also did not want a quota. We wanted equality over preferential treatment. But we have created such circumstances for women that they find it difficult to make it to the chambers of parliament or to the assemblies. That is why this quota system. I tell them, to all the naysayers who believe that women can't do adequately enough and they need a quota system, we did not need a quota system. You forced us to create that quota system, and we shall now ensure that our voice is loud enough and heard enough to be able to dictate the policies of this country.
Priyanka Chaturvedi, thank you so much for joining us, for taking time out, and of course, extremely crucial days ahead. Let's see how this shapes up.
Thanks, Neha. Thank you.
Well, I'm being joined right now by Shikha Mukherjee, who's a senior journalist. Good evening, Shikha. Thank you so much for joining me. Ms. Shikha, straight to you at this point. We were just hearing Priyanka Chaturvedi, a former Rajya Sabha MP, speak what she was speaking. We've heard a lot of opposition MPs talk about them. Quite contrary to what Priyanka Chaturvedi was really talking about. And now we've been able to access, the draft amendment bill. What do you make out of this with the first preview, Ms. Shikha?
Well, first and foremost, let me say that in the Deve Gowda cabinet, during Mr. Deve Gowda's term as Prime Minister, it was Geeta Mukherjee who brought in the bill. So there is a strong demand. It has been a long-term demand for reservation, and I think it's necessary if we look at how. I mean, this is natural justice in a sense. It's not 50%, which it should be, but at least it's getting there, with 33% in the state assemblies. And the problem here is of two kinds. One, if there was a rush, and I'm quoting the Prime Minister, he says it is imperative now. He says that this is the time. Well, 2011, the population of India was one way. In between 2011 and 2026, the demographics have changed. And it's absolutely unfair that we can't wait another year to get the demographics right, to get the constituencies right, to do the delimitation as the process is meant to be. And I really don't understand how anyone with any sense of responsibility talks about delimitation as though it is a kind of, you superimpose one map on the other and you get the delimitation done. That's not how it is. A delimitation commission has to be constituted. The delimitation commission will have its terms of reference. The delimitation commission must hold its hearings with the political parties, with the in the constituencies, and in the states, and it has to take in what the public has to say. It's not you don't do a delimitation as a kind of rough and ready exercise. It's there for a very long time. If you look at when delimitation happened last, more than 30 odd years ago, you've been working on with the same number of seats, with the same number of constituencies, with the same boundaries, whatever. I mean, you have to do this as a proper exercise. It can't be done in a hurry. Number one, delimitation has a procedure. That procedure needs to be followed, and that has to take the time that it has to take. The census is here. You cannot fiddle with the demographics of India.
Okay.
Data which is so old doesn't make sense at all. It's irrational. It's a logical discrepancy, if you ask me.
Ms. Shikha, it's interesting that you say, why not wait for at least a year more? But that's really not what the opposition has also said. And while you're making that point,
I'm not the opposition.
No, I'm not saying you're the opposition. We're trying to decode this into layers of what it is. So, even when the bill was passed in the parliament, the opposition wanted
opposition to it. It was a unanimous. Unanimous.
Correct, and the opposition wanted it to be implemented as soon as possible, then and there.
No. Let's get this very straight. The women's organizations of all these political parties all of them said that it should be implemented immediately. In other words, with the existing number of seats, you reserve it on a one-third basis, do it on a rotation basis, and then we wait for the census. As the census drums up the numbers, then we can decide on whether every constituency will represent, each MP in Parliament will represent more or less average across the board, except in very small places. They will represent 2.5 million voters, or will they represent 1 million people? So these are principles. Those decisions will take some time because, as I said, the delimitation process has a consultative process. And therefore, when the women organizations demanded that it should be implemented immediately, they said, on whatever is the current basis, let's do it with the existing number of seats in Parliament. In other words, in 2024, let's implement it. Now, in 2024, you didn't do it. In 2026, you want to do it when the census process is already underway, which is another logical discrepancy. I really don't understand what this is all about. And then you seem to think that you can hurry through a delimitation process. It's simply not possible. Things have to take the time because these are things which have a long-term impact on how the way in which people get represented in Parliament and in the state assemblies. I mean, let's not forget this. I mean, if you have a constituency of 2.5 million people, that's one way of representing people. If you have 1 million people, then that's another way of representing people. And the same applies to the state assemblies. I mean, these are very, very critical issues about how many people get represented and how close that connection is between the representative of the people and the people themselves.
Right. Ms. Shikha, one question, possibly the last question, we're kind of short on time.
Sure.
But the days ahead are crucial. And this is the question I seem to be asking everybody I'm talking to. We've seen this era after era after era. These bills have come before the Parliament many times. This time it's been passed.
No. There is no bill. This is a law.
True.
This is an act. The Constitution has been amended.
The amendment bill is being brought in.
Constitution.
What I'm trying to understand at this point is, and when I'm asking this question is, will the government and the opposition be able to see eye to eye on this?
See, there is no question of not seeing eye to eye. It was unanimously adopted.
Correct.
So, all political parties, as representatives of the people, have agreed that this shall be done. So I don't see where the only problem with this eye to eye thing is questioning the rush and questioning the timing. It's in the 16th of April is at the height of the election campaign in Tamil Nadu and West Bengal. It could have, it's not going to get done tomorrow. It's not going to get done next week. It's going to take time because delimitation is a process, as I explained.
Right.
And therefore, there is no harm done. You do it after the 4th of May. What's the problem? Do it in the monsoon session. The monsoon session is only in July.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Shikha Mukherjee, for joining us, for your time on this. A very important aspect of this is, of course, the delimitation. And that's also something that we are going to look into detail as well in our next deep dive. Ms. Shikha Mukherjee, thank you for your time. Time for a very short break. On the other side, we decode the delimitation bill of the centre and why are southern state chief ministers so angry.